Welcome back, folks, to another episode of Jamin's Daily. Today we have a special treat for you. We are going to continue with our novel that we were writing together called HRH. Humanoids Are Human. And for those who didn't watch the first episode, it was episode 28. We go over the beginnings, the preface, the prologue, and the first 5 first draft chapters, and a little into chapter 6. But we're going to continue with this book, HRH, Humanoids Are Human. And I don't have as much content written for the chapters going forward. This is really an outline for where we're trying to go, and then we have to elaborate. Okay, but this is the outline for the book. And I had said there's a lot of chapters, and I think we're going to merge some of the chapters, so there won't be as many chapters as we end up that are in the outline. They will be, broken down, merged together, perhaps. We'll see. Who knows? We're going to do what we want. It's our book. So, we left with chapter 6. And in this chapter, the Lieutenant General Lee goes back to the womb and has an extensive conversation with Bill Masterson about manufacturing and procuring military-grade humanoids. And these humanoids are then taken to a secret military installation for testing. And then further details are revealed regarding Bill Masterson's mindset and his newly, because he's fixing in the story, he gets a humanoid for himself. In addition to working for the human corporation, now he's got one himself, and this is going to have its own storyline. So Chapter 7 is entitled Universal Basic Income Act. So in this chapter, Congresswoman Martha Powers goes on Jane Worthington's nightly cable news show, where she discusses how persons are conflicted about exactly how to approach the humanoid dilemma. She promotes the UBI Act as a way to alleviate massive unemployment. Jane Worthington, where we're going with this is that she's a conservative commentator. And so Jane is her usual fiery anti-humanoid self. So Jane is more of skeptical of the humanoids and where this is leading humanity. Chapter 8 is titled Jim the Creeper. So remember, Jim has the missing humanoid. He's in possession of a black market stolen humanoid that he has named Cupcake, who happens to be in the likeness of Melanie, who is the deceased wife of our protagonist, whose name escapes me now, Luke. But in this chapter, in chapter 9, Jim the Creeper, the reader enters a more detailed world of Jim, some background, Melanie's captor, and his daily activities with Cupcake. So you can use your imagination how we're going to elaborate on that. What he's put in tormenting her, the way their relationship works, because that's going to work into the whole book, into the series. Chapter 9. Luke meets Nancy. Who's Nancy? Let's find out. In this chapter, days have passed since Melanie has gone missing. Luke has been to the police department and has posted a reward on social media on the internet. He is upset at the notion that Melanie is merely a humanoid, and this anger leads him to the Humanoids Are Human movement. He reaches out to the movement and meets with Nancy Wright, the leader and director of the local HRH movement. So the next chapter, chapter 10, Luke the protester. Luke joins the local HRH branch on a protest, but he's at this protest, he's confronted by Father Martinez, who is a counter-protester, who is counter-protesting with the RPF. which stands for Real People First. Luke is also confronted by Juan Garcia, the RPF protester he met a week earlier when he was on his way to the police department. Chapter 11, Killer Robots. In this chapter, the reader is taken to an undisclosed location at a military research facility. Here, Lieutenant General Lee is in charge of weaponizing humanoids. He details how the U.S. government has been colluding with Alexei Ivanov to maintain the human corporation's monopoly in exchange for access to their humanoids, their engineers, and the technology. Lee also convinces Bill Masterson to be his point man inside the womb. Bill still struggles with his involvement with humanoids and the morality of it all. Chapter 12 is entitled Cupcake Flashbacks. So in this chapter, a phenomenon only recently being reported is occurring with Cupcake. Humanoids have been reported as having data recovery or flashbacks of their human selves. These flashbacks are very quick and opaque, but the glitch, as THC calls it, is an issue with advanced AI, and the THC engineers are working on a fix. Chapter 13, Luke is conflicted. In this chapter, weeks have passed, and Luke is no closer to finding Melanie. However, he has been drawn into the complex debate going on in regards to humanoids and their effect on society. He is more sympathetic to the HRH now that his humanoid has gone missing, but he has been challenged by RPF, and he can see things their way. Chapter 14, Luke gets a lead. In this chapter, let's look at our notes here. In this chapter, a pizza delivery boy recognizes Cupcake from the social media post Luke has been making. He contacts Luke. Luke is ecstatic but unsure of how to go about rescuing Melanie. He decides to call the police. The police assure Luke they will go to Jim's apartment to further investigate. Chapter 15 is called Humanoid Bill of Rights. In this chapter, the reader is taken to Washington, D.C. for congressional hearings in regards to the Humanoid Bill of Rights proposal. Persons testifying before Congress include Alexei Ivanov, who's the founder and CEO of the Human Corporation, the directors of the HRH and RPF, religious leaders, etc. This hearing and the Humanoid Bill of Rights foreshadows the coming predicament Luke finds himself in with Melanie. So there's some foreshadowing going on, folks. Going back to high school English courses. Chapter 16, Inalienable Humanoid Rights Act. In this chapter, Congress passes the controversial Inalienable Humanoid Rights Act, granting humanoids many of the rights afforded to actual living human beings. The consequences of such action is not precisely clear at first, but over time, the unintended consequences become more and more apparent. Chapter 17, I'm Cupcake, not Melanie. In this chapter, law enforcement raids Jim's apartment and recovers Luke's humanoid. However, due to the recent passing of the Humanoid Bill of Rights, Luke is unable to initially take possession of Melanie because Melanie says she's not Melanie. Her name is Cupcake, and she does not want to leave Jim's apartment. So now the robots have rights, and they're not property. You can't just take your humanoid back when Cupcake says she wants to stay. Chapter 18, Return to the Womb. In this chapter, the Humanoid Corporation is responding to the quickly changing political and social climate surrounding their humanoids. Alexei Ivanov is seen having several meetings with top officials and key executives. Lieutenant Colonel Lee meets with Bill Masterson. Bill is persuaded by Lee to become a corporate spy for the Pentagon and spy on THC while at the same time continuing to work with Lee and the Pentagon in their mission to procure and weaponize humanoids. Further depth is given to Bill's emotions conflicting with his actions. So again, this is going to be a recurring theme with Bill, the insider, who's being asked by the government to be like a corporate spy, but then also help them get these weaponized humanoids. So it's gonna be very interesting how that goes. Chapter 19, futuristic love triangle. In this chapter, more depth is given to the relationship and circumstances of Melanie Cupcake with Jim and her past relationship with Luke. Cupcake begins to have fuller self-awareness, which is a current phenomenon occurring since the latest THC software update for humanoids. So just like with our cell phones, folks, software update comes up for the humanoid, it automatically downloads it, but there's a glitch. Chapter 20, Luke meets with Melanie. In this chapter, Luke finally meets with Melanie. She now goes by Melanie, not Cupcakes. Having reached an even fuller sense of awareness, Melanie is bound to Jim by a sense of allegiance, but has moments which confuse her. Feeling she has not experienced before, she continues to meet Luke behind Jim's back for weeks. In the meantime, an update of current affairs and events is given via scenes with both David Abelson and Jane Worthington. David Abelson is another. We're going to have, like, one of the cool things we're going to try and do with this book is incorporate things that we see now, like cable news pundits. So these Jane Worthington and David Abelson are going to be cable news pundits that are used within the book to move the story along and go over things. So they're going to be debating. There's going to be scenes of them talking about what's going on. It's going to be pretty cool. Chapter 21, A Country Divided. In this chapter, a grim summation of the U.S.'s current political and social unrest is reviewed by tying in all the story's past events. Nancy Wright, Juan Garcia, Father Martinez, Congresswoman Powers, Lieutenant Colonel Lee, Bill Masterson, Alexei Ivanov, Jane Worthington, and David Abelson all make appearances in this chapter and provide a backdrop of all the things happening around Luke and Melanie's tragic romance. This chapter is an attempt to leave the reader with a sense of suspense for the unknown. How are things going to turn out? Let me see, how many? Wow. Let's keep going with this, folks. So, chapter 22, Melanie tries to leave Jim. In this chapter, Melanie has made the decision to leave Jim. She is worried he will react violently. Luke calls the police and is able to file a report of humanoid abuse. He gives the cops the address. Investigators speak with both Jim and Melanie. Melanie is allowed to leave Jim under the new HRH laws. She returns to Luke. Jim is devastated and plats and schemes for revenge. Ooh. Chapter 23, there's a THC scandal. In this chapter, Bill provides enough intel to Lieutenant Colonel Lee, enabling Lee to effectively blackmail THC. Lee meets with Ivanov. Leaks are spread through the media alleging THC with the Pentagon. And Bill Masterson is found dead. Dun dun dun. Chapter 24, the Hastings, community organizers. So the Hastings is Luke and Melanie Hastings. That's what their name was. Or is. In this chapter, Luke and Melanie get more involved with HRH campaign. Meeting with Nancy Wright. Their experience has convinced them of the necessity and validity of the HRH laws. So now remember, Luke now is basically treated as humanoid as though it's a human. It's his wife. So now they're pro-humanoid. Chapter 25, Jim and the RPF. In this chapter, reeling from the pain of losing Cupcakes, Jim falls into depression and builds resentment and hatred for all humanoids and their supporters. He joins the local RPF chapter and begins to attend rallies where he meets Juan Garcia and watches Jane Worthington on TV every night. Chapter 26, the re-election of Congresswoman Powers. In this chapter, Powers is a Democrat up for re-election in the 9th congressional district seat in Houston, Texas. She supports the HRH laws and long consideration and persuasion by many factors not limited to being bribed by THC. So she's kind of a crooked politician. Luke and Melanie get involved in the campaign as volunteers. RPF protests at Power's rally. At the rally/protest, Jim runs into Melanie. Ooh. So you gotta remember. So you gotta picture what's happening. So Luke and Melanie are at the HRH event because now they're supporting HRH. Jim, who just lost his humanoid, is now resentful. So he's like, screw all the humanoids. I'm for real people first. So he gets involved with RPF. And at this event, RPF and HRH are there, and Jim and Melanie cross paths. Chapter 27. Attempted murder of a humanoid. In this chapter, Jim is overcome with rage after seeing Melanie. He sneaks up on her and shoots her with his Ruger 380 pocket pistol. Jim saves one bullet for himself and commits suicide. Melanie is badly damaged to her face, eyes, and head. Luke is forced to send her off to THC for repairs. Because remember, she's a humanoid. That's going to make for a great movie scene, though. You know how that's going to happen. See, I'm gonna write the novel. Then we're gonna turn it. I'm gonna write the screenplay, and then I want to direct the movie. And maybe I'll be Luke. No, I want to be Ivanov and use a Russian accent. I think I can pull it off. Chapter 28, Crime Against Humanoids Outbreak. In this chapter, more is detailed about the ongoing crime against humanoids. It's become an epidemic. Humanoids are the newest and most vulnerable victim group. Above all other racial, ethnic, and religious minorities in the LGBTQ communities, even more than them. RPF supporters are blamed for many assaults, and politicians supported by RPF are accused of bigotry. Social and political flames are at a boiling point. Chapter 29, Election Day. In this chapter, Congresswoman Powers wins re-election in a very close race. Allegations of voter fraud and other shenanigans are made. RPF contests the results. Many other district races have similar outcomes. The media goes overboard with the HRH propaganda. Lieutenant Colonel Lee and Alexei Ivanov have weathered the previous scandal and continue with their nefarious, villainous plans. Chapter 30, 6 months later, in the immediate future. Luke receives an updated and completely fixed Melanie. They decide to no longer get involved in the politics. All they need is each other and their child. The next several chapters will detail Luke and Melanie, their experiences trying to live a normal life as husband and wife, human and humanoid, in a post-HRH laws world. Chapter 31. RPF is labeled a terrorist organization. In this chapter, RPF has become its own political party with its very own militia. A armed far-right militia group calling themselves the RPF Militia has committed several terrorist acts in the last 12 months. The RPF is a thorn in the side of Lieutenant Colonel Lee and Alexei Ivanov. Both wage a campaign in their own unique way to combat RPF. Chapter 32, WikiLeaks. A top secret intel is leaked by whistleblowers on covert research regarding humanoids. This leak provides many details and is highly controversial and exposes corruption, bribery, and collusion at the highest levels of government and special interests involving humanoids. Chapter 33, Project Spy on RPF Secret Agent. In this chapter, Luke and Melanie, frustrated with current events and constantly radicalized by the HRH movement, they're still involved with, even though they tried to get away. But now all this RPF stuff that's going on is getting them back into the mix. They decide to take their activism to the next level. They volunteer to go undercover and join RPF. They link up with Juan Garcia and Father Martinez and report directly to Nancy Wright, who in turn reports to shadowy figures associated with Lee and Ivanov. Chapter 34, Becoming Unbrainwashed, Then Famous. Luke and Melanie are exposed to more and more anti-HRH information because they're undercover with the RPF. They begin to question their allegiance to the HRH. Melanie is outed as a humanoid by fellow RPF members, and Luke and Melanie they blow their cover. Luke and Melanie make political news and are invited on both David Abelson's and Jane Worthington's nightly political shows. Because here are these people who have been undercover, both sides, this and that. So they become politically famous of sorts. Chapter 35. In this chapter, a buzzword that the media and academics have been pushing on the masses is post-human. It designates a period in which humanoids are human and real people are co-equals to humanoids, and humanoids are welcome into the realm of humanity. Luke and Melanie are a famous post-human couple, but these relationships are becoming more prevalent. There are new reality shows featuring humanoids and real people in relationships. The RPF strongly opposes it, along with the church. It's a huge issue that further divides the masses, the population, the world. It only gets better, folks. What's going to happen? Chapter 36. The first GI humanoids see combat action. So in this chapter, Lieutenant Colonel Lee, after several years of testing, is finally able to get the go-ahead to utilize a humanoid soldier in a covert special operations mission. And in this chapter, it's going to detail the mission and what the humanoid is able to do and stuff. Chapter 37, the government takeover of THC. So in this chapter, congressional hearings and investigations have laid a warrant for the arrest of Alexei Ivanov on charges of corruption, money laundering, and treason. He had meetings and dealings with Russian and Chinese officials in regards to THC intellectual property. Lieutenant Colonel is forced to step down under heavy scrutiny and criticism for his involvement with Ivanov. Classified intelligence details the U.S. military-industrial complex involvement in weaponizing advanced humanoids in violation of several international treaties. The government, on the pretext of national security, then takes custodial ownership of THC. And they're going to try to nationalize it. Chapter 38, the government control of THC. In this chapter, Ivanov flees to Russia. Chapter 39 is going to be then the RPF declares war on the U.S. government. Chapter 40, humanoids on alert. Luke and Melanie deal with the dangers of being humanoid in the USA in the year, who knows, somewhere time in the future. Violent RPF attacks are being carried out on the public much more frequently. Lots of dialogue. There's going to be lots of dialogue in this chapter detailing, again, Luke and Melanie's relationship, where they've been, how far they've come. Sets up for a good overview of the overall storyline so far. Chapter 41. We're almost done here. This chapter 41 is called The Path. And in this chapter, Luke and Melanie start the Path Foundation, which stands for People Who Accept and Tolerate Humanoids. Path. It is a movement in response to the violent anti-humanoid movement spreading across the U.S. and the world. Luke and Melanie become at odds with their former community activist mentor, Nancy Wright, of the HRH movement. There's drama and competition between the organizations, which leads to betrayal and ruined friendships. So the activists are fighting amongst each other. The activists are fighting amongst each other. It sounds like I'm saying that wrong. The activists are fighting amongst each other. Chapter 42, Alexei, founder and father to humanoids. Ivanov, with the assistance of the Russian government, has made advances in humanoid software and now believes he may be able to hack all humanoids and impose his own software update. The plan is to hack all humanoids and demand ransom, then upload software which allows the Russian government to control all humanoids. The hack only affects 90% of humanoids, and an estimated 10% of humanoids are not affected by the hack. And Melanie is luckily part of that 10%. So what happens? Humanoids get hacked by Russia and Ivanov. So in chapter 43, the hack leads to humanoids rebelling against humans. And in chapter 44, a war breaks out between the humans and humanoids. In chapter 45, HRH and Path, are they sympathizers or traitors? Chapter 46, Melanie is a victim of an RPF terrorist attack. In chapter 47, Luke is out for revenge. In chapter 48, humanoids overrun most urban areas. And in chapter 49, world governments collapse, and Luke is left to lead an insurgency to try to battle the humanoids, or try to bring peace and an end to war, which will then leads to the next book in the series. And that's the outline for our book, guys. Humanoids are human. It's gonna happen. I'm gonna spend the next couple of weeks. If I could it'll only take me a couple hours every week, maybe 20 minutes a day, to go through each one of these chapters that we talked about, to add to it, not to finish it. Again, still considering this all first draft, but we can add to it, and then when we add to it, then we go back and reread it, and then build from there, guys. I think it's gonna take some time, but it's gonna be a lot of fun while we're doing it together. If you have any suggestions, send them my way to jaminsdaily@gmail.com, or go on Facebook. You can find us at Jamins Daily. Send us a message, like, share. You can always find our podcast. You can find our podcast now, folks, on iHeartRadio. We're on iHeartRadio. We're also on iTunes. So many places to find Jamins Daily on the internet nowadays. And when you do, be sure to tell your friends about it. And then don't forget that this podcast is brought to you by Sage Choice Insurance Agency. Home and auto experts. In business for 5 years. Operated by yours truly. Been doing insurance for 12 years now. So we're experts in the local community. We can help. Trying to buy a home, sell a home. Looking for quotes. We're always looking for referral partners. So if you're a realtor or a loan originator, give us a call. We can help you close your deals. We can help you help your clients. We treat your clients like they're our customers, okay? Again, call us 361-400-2411. You can even go online to quotefromjamin.com. It's up here on the whiteboard, if you can see it in the background. You can also go to refer. If you're already a customer, go to refer-to-jamin.com. You can put in some information and submit it. And if we're able to give these people a quote, $10 gift card. HEB. Do some grocery shopping. But I want to thank the folks at home for listening to this episode on HRH, our second episode detailing the book that we're going to write. And until the next episode, until then, be sure to stick with us, because the best is yet to come.